Hello, and welcome to another episode of Double J's List. If you get a chance, please hit the like and subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be talking about, I was going to make this video about the Volkswagen ID Buzz van, the electric van that's retro styled and very cool. However, I got to thinking. I was like, well, this is a 3-row of seating electric vehicle. There's not a lot of choices out there for electric vehicles that have 3 rows. So I got to think, well, what are these different vehicles that are out there? So the first ones that I could think of were like the Tesla Model X. Then there's like the Rivian R1S, Volvo EX90, and the Mercedes EQS. Those are all significantly more expensive than the ID Buzz, so they don't really compete. If someone's shopping for an ID Buzz, they're not going to be shopping those more expensive ones more than likely, if they're trying to stay within a budget. So, okay, let's get down to a lower price point. There's like the Mercedes EQB and like the Tesla Model Y, but unfortunately those have a 3rd row. However, it's extraordinarily small, and you can only put like the smallest children possible in it. You really couldn't put anything resembling an adult back there. So I don't feel that competes against a minivan, which has a 3rd row that can actually hold adults. So it all came full circle around to the Kia EV9. That is a pretty similar vehicle. It has a similar base price. The base price for the EV9 is around $55,000. The base price for the ID Buzz is about $59,000. So they're in the same ballpark, and when you start optioning out, they can be pretty comparable. So I'm going to bring up a list of things. I didn't even count how many different things I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories where I declare a winner in each, and based on the research that I've done for this video. So I'm going to go right into what's one of the most important things with an EV, and that is range. Now, this was slightly tricky because when you look at base model of the ID Buzz versus the base model of the EV9, they're very, very close. The base model range for the ID Buzz is 234 miles. The base range for the EV9 is 230 miles. So they're within 4 miles of each other, which is extremely close. Now, that doesn't tell the entire story. So when you move up to an all-wheel drive trim level for both of these, it changes. With the ID Buzz, it keeps the same battery, and since it's all-wheel drive, it loses a slight amount of range. It goes from 234 to 231, so it loses 3 miles. Not that big of a deal. However, if you get an all-wheel drive EV9, you get a larger battery. So your range goes up to 280 miles, and if you get the top of the line trim, it goes down to 270 because I presume it has larger wheels, and larger wheels take away range. So you know there's a price to pay for looking cool with big wheels, right? And then going even further, there is a trim level of the EV9 that is only rear-wheel drive, but gets the big battery, and that has 304 miles of range. So long short of it, if you're going to be getting an all-wheel drive, you're definitely going to get a lot more range out of the ID Buzz, because that's going to be a lot more appealing, especially to those of us in the Northeast who deal with snow and other kinds of weather. Also, when you have all-wheel drive in an EV, you get 2 motors at least, so you get more power because you add a motor, you add that amount of horsepower to the entire car. It's different than a traditional gasoline engine with 4-wheel drive with a transfer case and the engine doesn't change, that sort of thing. So you usually get a heck of a lot faster, a lot more power, and that's the best thing. And then if you do the rear-wheel drive one with the big battery, you really, really win with 304. Now, when it comes to range, it's a really personal thing. It depends on how much you drive and how much you road trip, things like that. And with this being a 3-row category comparison, chances are you're going to be using it to road trip. People who buy 3-row vehicles, whether they be minivans or crossovers, they're going to be doing a lot. They tend to do a lot of traveling. They have kids that do travel sports, that sort of thing, and having an extra amount of range, whether it's 30 miles or 50 miles or whatever it may be, is a pretty big deal. If you're not the type of person that travels around, you just kind of commute around and you drive, less than 100 miles a day, then actually this doesn't really factor in. But I think for this category of vehicle, it's important. So I'm going to give Kia the win for range. We're going to move on to the next category, which is the third row seat. So obviously, if you're shopping these two, it's because you're looking for a third row, presumably, and they have third rows, but they're different. So the Volkswagen ID Buzz is a minivan in the traditional shape, in the sense it's very squared off, and therefore it has a larger back seat. Then both of them only seat two people, so it's not like the most traditional minivans like a Toyota Sienna or a Chrysler Pacifica where they can fit three in that back row. It only fits two, but there is a significant amount of extra room in the ID Buzz. So that one is an easy one. ID Buzz wins. All right, moving on. We're going to go to cargo room. And again, this is where that box shape of the minivan wins. The cargo room in the back of the ID Buzz just inherently has more room. You can stack things taller because it doesn't have that back slanting down like the SUV does, or the crossover. So so again, there's another win for the ID Buzz. All right, we're going to move on to the entry to the second and third row seats. Since the EV9 is a traditional crossover, it has hinged doors like a traditional car, whereas the ID Buzz has power sliding doors like a minivan. And anyone who's ever owned a minivan can tell you that sliding doors are far superior to hinged doors. First off, if your kids are getting in, they're a lot less likely, in fact almost impossible, to swing a door into a car or an object next to the vehicle, because the door only pops out a little bit and then slides along the side of the car. Makes a whole lot more sense for families. The opening itself is much larger, so if you're, let's say, putting in an infant that's in a rear-facing car seat that's still in the seat, you have a lot bigger hole in the side of the car to put that in. That works really, really well, so that's an advantage. Their power and they open up easier, and it's easier to get to that third row of seats with the bigger opening from the sliding door. So I think you can kind of see where this is going. The entry to the rear is the Volkswagen ID Buzz. Pretty simple. All right, now we're going to talk about the vehicle infotainment, the radio and the other controls for the car. So from what I was reading about the Kia EV9, Kia's pretty up to date on their infotainment. It all works pretty well. I didn't see anybody complain. It's pretty configurable. Connects to everything really well. Seems to work quickly, fast. The processors are good, and you can swipe from screen to screen. There's no delay. So that is not a mark against it. Now, Volkswagen's infotainment is pretty bad. So I test drove an ID4, and I saw all the reviews saying that the infotainment was really hard to use and slow and everything like that, and I tried to go into it without that in the back of my mind, and it was by far one of the most frustrating experiences with a vehicle interface that I've ever had in my life. It was terrible, and Volkswagen has admitted that it's bad, and they have purchased a 50% stake in the company Rivian, because theirs is among some of the best in the world, mostly, presumably, for their technology of how you interact with the car inside. They're really, really good at it, and hopefully that brings that, because the ID Buzz is based on that same software that they used in the ID4. Apparently they've upgraded some of the computer processors and things like that, so it runs a little bit smoother, but it's still really hard to work and make it do everything that it needs to do. Like, how do I change the radio station? It's like 4 or 5 different steps and clicks of the touch screen. So it's infuriating. And hopefully this next generation will, when Rivian comes in, they'll probably do a refresh of this thing in a few years. Hopefully all that comes in and this becomes a lot better. But that's an easy win, infotainment for Kia. Now features. Kia and Hyundai, they're the same company. They've been known to have a lot of really good features in their cars. They typically, if you compare brand to brand and price point to price point, you're just going to generally get more features with their vehicles, and the EV9 appears to be no different. So, not that the VW ID Buzz doesn't have a lot of really cool features. It's loaded with all sorts of cool stuff, but when you compare it to a similar price point, the EV9's got way more stuff. There's like heated and cooled with power seats in the second row available into this. So like for you're gonna pay, let's say the $70,000 trim level, getting towards the top of the line for both, you're just gonna get more stuff on the Kia, just because that's just inherently the way their brand works. So features goes to Kia. All right, now styling. Styling obviously is really, really subjective. However, I think that you can't argue that the Volkswagen ID Buzz is really appealing. It's not overly offensive like the Tesla Cybertruck. When you see one, you're like, hey, that's really fun, that's really cool. No knocks against the Kia EV9, because the EV9's got some really nice styling for a crossover. It's not like super in your face that it's an EV, but the ID Buzz, it somehow has made the minivan cool. So I think that's a pretty easy win in my book. That styling wise, ID Buzz wins. So now let's go down to, those are the categories that I had. Now just to my subjective, what I think I would purchase if I were spending the money. I've owned EVs. I know that I can get away with 231 miles of range or 234 miles of range in my lifestyle that I drive. We don't do a lot of road trips, and I don't drive. It's crazy if I drive 100 miles a day. It's usually significantly less than that. So I could easily work with the range of the ID Buzz. It would be really handy for me to have that third row. Every now and then we're picking up like some of my kids' friends or cousins or whatever, and just be really great to have that extra set of seats in the back. So I think the styling, obviously, I really like that. And I think I would be able to get over the infotainment system and the lack of features to have the ID Buzz, because it's so cool. I mean, I'm a Volkswagen person at heart. I've owned many. I've been a part of the VW community here in Western New York for many, many years. I've made a ton of friends. In fact, that's very similar to the Beetle that I owned at one time. I do like the retro ones. But I think that the clear winner of this, for me, is the ID Buzz. If that range is a real deal breaker for you, or you maybe need the extra cargo space that the ID Buzz has, then that might be a determining factor for you. But for me, that's the one that I would pick. So if you have any opinions about this, if you don't agree with me at all, leave a comment below. I'd really appreciate it. And give me a like, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. I would really appreciate all that too. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned.